So today's lesson that we're going to be working on, proportional linear relationships, is going to be glued in the little partial sheet onto page 31 of your journal. So you'll want to make sure you go to your front of your table of contents on here and add page 31 to it. So I'm going to add this to it, page 31. And this is going to be on proportional linear relationships, proportional linear relationships. And that might be a little blurry. So we'll give it in a minute to process there. So page 31, proportional, sorry for my sloppy writing here tonight, proportional linear relationships. And this is going to be lesson 3-4. And Miss Wheeler had gone over LinReg or linear regression on your TI-84. And if you haven't watched that video, you better, because you're going to be kind of lost as we're going through the proportional linear relationships and using the TI-84. And that's back to the table of contents. So we're back to page 31, proportional linear relationships. I've kind of gotten in the habit lately of just putting the lesson 3-4 up here in the top right, just so I know which chapter lesson we're in. So proportional linear relationships. So just reading kind of what's there, it's going to be really referring to part of the equation for the slope of a line, and that's y equals mx. And some of you are familiar with y equals mx plus b. We won't be doing the adding b part quite yet. We'll talk about that later for you 7th graders that might be a little lost in that. But we're going to be looking at mainly slope, which we know slope to be our m value, and then x to be our changing x value along our axis and giving us a linear equation. But because today is proportional, what we're really talking about is the fact that it's traveling through 0, 0, or the point 0, 0. And to remind you of that, you'll see an O and an O right here. And I guess there's another O here. You really only need to look at 2 of them and remind yourself that that means that this line is going to pass through 0, 0 if it's proportional. We know it's linear. We know it makes a line. We know it's got a constant rate of change due to its slope. But the 0, 0 means that it's traveling through the point of origin always. And that's why we don't have our plus b added or our minus b or whatever it might be, because that would change where my line was located and shift it off of the 0, 0 location in the middle of the graph. So proportional today, all of the lines we'll be dealing with are going to travel through the point of origin or 0, 0. So a linear relationship is proportional when the ratio of y to x is a constant or a constant rate of change referred to as slope or m. Y equals mx is what we're going to be looking at, where m is the slope and m cannot ever be 0. That means the slope can't be 0 slope. And if you remember slope guide, that's where we talk about the 0 where the cheeks are, where we have a line going straight across this way. That's 0 slope. For example, y equals 3x. So if you take a look at this equation, y equals 3x, and I look at the graph, I know that I can plot points and put it into a table and see where those points are located. So this is kind of already graphed for you, but if you kind of think about what's happening there, I know that it's traveling through the point, the line's traveling through the point 0, 0. It's also traveling through 1, negative 3. And so we have to kind of look for that point right there. So it's going by twosies, it's kind of hard to see. So -1, -3, it's going to travel through that connection point right there. So right there is where it's hitting the line. It's hard to see. You probably have to look really closely at your copy. So that's at -1, -3. And then a third point can be found located at 1, 3, where the line hits right there. How do I know that's where it hits? Well, I can put this into a table of values. And so if I do 3 times -1, my y output would be -3. 3 times 0 will give me an output of 0 on the y. 3 times 1 would give me 3. And so those are my 3 points on the line right there that I know there's an infinite number of points, and that's just 3 of them. And we'll be using this today in our TI-84 and looking at LinReg and finding slope and other things. So the slope of the graph of y equals mx is m. That's always m. Since 0, 0 is one solution of y equals mx, the graph of a proportional linear relationship passes always through the point of origin. Some things to remember, and some of you have talked to me about this, is that unit rate is what slope kind of resembles too. It's a rate or ratio that means per one of something, and that per one is found in the denominator location. And so you think of slope too, sometimes we say if the slope is, in this case, 3 or 3 over 1, that's a unit rate of 3 per every one of whatever I have. And we can think of it that way. So that's why slope is equal to the unit rate. So something out of 1 or per 1 or money per 1. Some things to be very, very familiar with as we're doing word problems and setting up these graphs that we're going to be doing and looking at graphs is that how do I know which one's my X and which is my Y? And we always know that when we're looking at a coordinate grid and we have an X location and we have a Y location, and we always know that slope is Y over X, is that to remember, usually X is what's called our value that's changing constant, but not changing all the time. So this is kind of a constant value. So in the case of if anytime you have time involved, so if I say have 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, that's time, it's progressive, that's your X value, and time will always be your X. And I think of a Timex watch when I say this, time X. Time is your X value. Think of a Timex, and this is a watch in case you don't know what a Timex watch is. Have a parent share that with you. And anytime you're dealing with money, just remember that that's always going to be a Y value. And so just remember money is a Y value. And why is it money? It's because it's why the world goes round. So it's why the world goes round. And so we think of money, and that's why the world goes round. So money is your Y value. And the reason money is your Y value is because when you're looking at the Y axis changing here, that money value can change to anything I want, but time is a constant. So that's something that's going to continue on and on and on and be consistent. So just thinking about in the world, which one's which is my X, which is my Y. Think of X always as your independent variable, and Y is dependent on whatever X is. And so we'll be talking a lot more about that as well. So these are kind of all your notes for today. Pretty simple, pretty basic. We're going to do a few examples off of the homework just so that you know exactly what you're doing. And if you'll take a moment, you can pause this right now and we will switch over to the homework page if you want to print that out. So I'm going to take a pause for just a minute. So before we jump over to the homework practice and the problem solving, and we're getting into that, I thought I'd go back over one more thing with the notes, and that is when it has y equals 3x. Ms. Wheeler talked about having 2 points and putting this into LINRIG, but I wanted to show you guys how you can kind of get a table of values too. So if it gives you that the equation is in the form y equals mx and y equals 3x, what you can do, and I want you to practice this, is hit the y equals, because I know y equals, and I want it y to equal 3x. And so you actually come down here and you press the 3 button. And so you see it's got a 3. And then you've got this xt, and it's got some Greek letters in there as well. And if you press the x 1 time, that second button right there, you'll get an x. And then what you can do from there, if you can see over here, it's got a graph button. I'm going to show you 2 different things. So you've got the table, which is above it in blue, and then you have the word graph here. If you were to actually hit the graph button, you would get a graph of what that line looks like, which is just right there on the page. But I want to know where these values came from. So you can actually hit the second blue button, and then the graph button, and it'll give you a table of values. Now, if you don't see on your table -1, -3, all you have to do is press the up down arrow. And if I actually go down to my negatives, I can go further back and I can see all the points within my table. And so this is a really nice feature. So there's 0, 0 showing us that it's proportional. We have 1, 3, and the -1, -3, and then there's a whole series of other points as well. And so this is kind of a nice feature to have this table and then the graph as well. And we'll be using that quite a bit later on. So back to how to put the 2 points in. So reminder on Mrs. Wheeler's video the other day. And by the way, if you want to get off any of these things, if you just hit the second mode button here that says quit, you can quit whatever you were in. So if I go back to doing the actual linreg or linear regression, I can hit my stat button here, hit stat, hit enter on the 1 right there. So you want it on 1, hit enter, and then you can type in your points, and you only need 2 points. And so in this case, we're going down to the bottom and we're going to hit the negative. Don't forget the negatives there. And we have -1, and then hit enter. And then I think I'll use 0, 0. So I'm going to hit the 0 button, enter. And always remember you have to hit enter to put the points in. So -1, -3, enter, and then a 0 point. And I'm just using the 0, 0 because I know it's proportional, and just make sure you hit enter. And then at that point, if you want to see what the slope of the line is or what the line of the equation of the line looks like, then you're going to hit your stat button again. And then you're going to scroll over this time to calculate, and you want it to calculate linreg or linear regression, which is number 4. So either hit the 4 button, which is just the number 4, oops, or scroll to 4. On this screen, you hit enter, and then when you get to here, you hit enter, enter all the way through all of these to calculate, and it gives you the slope. So again, y equals the a is 3, so 3x plus 0, but I don't write plus 0 because anything plus 0 is just itself. So that's where you get your y equals 3x from on your screen. Okay, so switching over to the practice on the homework a little bit here, and we'll just go through some of these together to make sure you're understanding. But it says y equals mx is the form, and we've got here a graph. And it says that the number of miles driven by the Hart family during their vacation is in a linear proportional relationship with the number of hours they spent traveling as shown in the graph. It says determine and interpret the slope. So all you really have to do is find 2 points on here, and then you're going to plug them into your linear regression, okay? Now, some of you might already know slope is rise over run, so you might already know that this says that I am going to go, and actually you can go from 0, 0. You don't have to choose these 2 points. But it looks like I rise 50 and I run 1. So some of you might already know that it's already 50 miles per 1 hour of time, or just 50 is our slope, right? Because that's our m value. Interpret the unit rate and compare it to the slope. So unit rate, if you remember back in the notes, is the value per 1. So really this is the unit rate. This would really be what we would call the slope, or m. So on unit rate, we would say it's 50 miles an hour. Okay, so back to, and compare it to the slope. What do you notice? They're the same. They are the same. So pretty straightforward. But if I go over here and I want to put these points into linreg, so what I can do, unless I really want us to practice this, I'm going to hit my stat button, and I'm going to go to enter edit right there on number 1. To clear these all the way, Ms. Wheeler had talked about this on her video, but go all the way to L1, hit clear button, and then enter, and then go up to L2. It has to be at the top of the column, and hit clear, enter, and make sure that that's darkened, and then you clear everything. And so my points here, I can just choose 2 of them. And remember, I can always use 0, 0, so that makes it simple. So I can do 0 on that. And remember, X's are in the first column, Y's in the second. So it'd be 0 for the first X, and then 1 for the other X. And then it's 0, 0, and 150. And then once I have my points in there, I can hit stat, calculate, and then hit 4, or go down to 4, enter, 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 calculate. And it gives me the linear regression, and it tells me right there, and remember A is slope, so 50 is my slope. And so really the answer to A is just 50, just 50. And here the unit rate would be 50 miles per hour, and they are the same there, the slope and the unit rate. what does the 0.00 represent? So what it's asking is 0 what? 0 what to what? So we can say the Hart family travels 0 miles in 0 hours. So that kind of helps you out with that one. Okay, and so that's kind of what you're going to be doing on number 2. On number 3, Amelia earned $40 for babysitting for 5 hours. The amount of money earned by Amelia while babysitting Y and the number of hours spent babysitting X are in a proportional linear relationship. This situation can be represented by Y equals 8X. And so just a reminder that we have money. And so anytime we have money, we're talking about that's the Y the world goes round. So we're going to know that money is our Y and hours spent is our time X, and just remember time X. And so that's our independent versus our dependent variables here. And so we want to, says graph it. I'm not really going to bore you about graphing it, but we can take that off right here. You can graph it on the calculator if you'd like with that button that I was telling you about here that says graph. And so all you have to do is hit Y equals, and instead of 3X there, you're going to go ahead and put 8X instead. And so you can do that and you can graph it and just practice graphing that. Determine and interpret the slope. And again, finding what the slope is, and you know that it's always in this form, Y equals mx, where m is always referred to as our slope. So that should be pretty easy. Interpret the unit rate and compare it to the slope. So what does it mean? Okay, you kind of just answered that at top. And explain how the graph shows a proportional linear relationship. How do we know graphs are proportional linear? Well, because they travel or pass through the point 0, 0. And that's what makes them proportional. And so back to that word proportional again, you have your 0, 0, and that's what you need to be familiar with, proportional. On the back side, these problems back here are going to ask for various things. Just read it really, really carefully. But in the case of some of these problems, if you get stuck, just refresh your brain on what proportional means. It passes through 0, 0. And then I can find some other points located and then put it in my LinRig so you don't have to spend a lot of time doing this manually. So it says on question 1, and I'll do this first one with you, that human hair grows 1 inch in 2 months. And remember, time is our X. So just remember that. And 2.5 inches in 5 months. So time is our X. So you know which one's X and which one's Y. So as ordered pairs go, if you were to graph this, it would be 2 months right here growing 1 inch. And so that would be my Y value because inches can change. And that's the Y changer. Y is dependent on whatever X is. And then our other ordered pair is 2.5 inches. And again, that would be my Y-axis changer. And then 5 months would be my, whoops, I did that backwards. Whoops, whoopsie, whoopsie. Sometimes you make mistakes. 2.5 inches. And I just said it was the Y and I stuck it in the wrong place. And 5 months is our X, our time is our X, and our inches is our Y value. And so those are our 2 points. So really all you have to do is put this into linear regression into your calculator. And it says at what rate is the hair growing per month? And that's looking for slope. So we want a rate or the unit rate. This is also referred to as unit rate. And so we're going to be looking for that unit rate. So to do this, we're not going to hit the Y equals button. We're going to hit the stat button. So we'll walk you through these steps again. You're going to hit the stat button. You're going to hit enter. I need to change my points. I'm going to go all the way up to the top, hit clear, enter, all the way up to the top, clear, enter. And I'm going to enter my points. 2 is going to go for my first X. My other X is a 5. My Y values are 1 and 2.5. And here's the thing. On decimals or on fractions, you have to have decimals. So be very careful on that, making sure you're only using decimals in your LinRig. So I'm going to put enter there, and there's my points. I'm going to hit stat, calculate 4, enter, 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 enter. And then it gives me the equation of the line where B, of course, better be 0 because it's proportional. So my slope is A, of course. And so, and by the way, I'll just put a little note up here in case you forget. M is also referred to as A on your calculator. I don't know why, but it is. And so we're going to put down here that the unit rate would be 0.5, but 0.5 what? Or you could say a half. If you wanted to say a half, you could say half there. And it might make more sense, but 0.5 inches is the change per 1 month of time. And so better way to write that is kind of just say half an inch per 1 month, and that's our unit rate. Okay, and so that's basically how you're going to be calculating it. And this could also be 1/2 inch, and you can just write per month and write the words out like that. So different ways to look at it. So this is pretty much it for the lesson. I hope you watched the video all the way through, so it should help you with your homework. When you get, I say homework, your classwork when you get into class tomorrow. If you've got any questions, please feel free to reach out.